Hi all. We are studying a wonderful chapter which is control and coordination, which is second chapter of biology for class 10 Cbse students. So this is the second video of the series. So in the last video we discussed about how control and coordination is a very characteristic property of living things. What is the difference between the way in which plants and animals respond to various stimuli, what exactly a stimuli is, what exactly responses are. Now in this video we are going to cover what are sense organs, what are receptors, what is a stimulus, and human nervous system. So this is also a wonderful topic, which is see, if you see multicellular animals, multicellular animals means there are lot of cells. Multicellular means lot of cells are there. So all the cells, if you see, every cell does some common function. Also, they have unique functions as well. It is like all human beings eat, but then your parents do a different job. Maybe your parents are working in a bank, some others parents are teachers, so they do specific task as well, but then all parents do eat. Likewise, all cells do common function as well as they do specific functions. So in multicellular organisms, if you see, uh, you know there are different kinds of multicellular organisms. In simple organisms, the nervous system is very, very simple. Okay, but then in some classes of multicellular organism like vertebrates, if you see, there are very complicated cells which join together to actually perform the function of nervous system. Okay, so they have highly evolved nervous system as well as hormonal system. Okay, so in vertebrates, if you see, they have nervous system as well as endocrine hormonal system is there. The other name of hormonal system is endocrine system. Okay, so some cells will be specialized to do the job of nervous system. So in simple organism, if you see, hormonal system may be absent. Mostly nervous system will only be present. Okay. Now, but then in unicellular animals, again, if you see, the responses are very limited, but still it is better than the plants. So in unicellular animals, the responses are limited and the nervous system is also very, very simple nervous system. Okay, nervous system. Now, if you see, in human beings, if you see, how do you perceive light? How do you understand that light is coming? You obviously have eyes for that. Based on, I mean, you use your eyes to see things, you use your ears to hear things, and you use your skin to feel the touch and pressure and heat and cold, and you use your tongue to taste and skin and nose to smell. So all these things are known as sense organs. Sense organs are basically the windows to the outside, based from where you perceive. How do you perceive your total surroundings? So if all these things stop working, you basically do not understand anything which is going on in the surroundings, right? If you do not have eyes, you will not be able to see anything outside. I mean, what if all the five organs stop working? Basically, you will be totally cut off from the surroundings and you will not be able to understand anything which is happening in your surroundings. So there are basically, if you see human beings, there are five sense organs. What are they? You already know that: ears, eyes, tongue, skin, nose. But in different animals, they have different kind of sense organs. All may not have nose, all may not have eyes. There are different forms of rudimentary eyes. I mean, very basic eyes might be there. So there are lot of variations of sense organs in different kind of animals. Skin also shows a lot of variations in different animals. So basically, in human beings, you have all five highly evolved sense organs. Now, what is meant by receptor? Receptor means, I already told you, some cells will be specialized to do some functions, right? So some cells in human beings, or for that matter in animals, they act as receptors. They are very special cells. In sense organs, there are, inside the sense organs, there are very special cells known as receptors. These receptors help us to, they are special cells. What do the receptors do? They are special cells which help us understand the stimulus. Okay, so if you see, So if you see, what are the receptors of ear? So in ear, what do you need? In ear, you basically need sound receptor. These are special cells which enable us to perceive or understand sound. So in ear, you have sound receptors. Another name of sound receptor is phonoreceptors. In eyes, you have specialized cells known as light receptors or photoreceptors. In tongue, you have to understand taste. So what helps us understand taste? These are taste receptors which are known as gustatory receptors. In skin, you have to understand heat and cold and pressure. So thermoreceptors are there, pressure receptors are there. Now in nose, you have to understand the smell, right? So smell receptors or olfactory receptors are there. So ears, phono always means sound, something related to sound. Eyes means photo always means light. Okay, tongue means gustatory. Skin, thermoreceptors are there, or nose for that matter, olfactory or chemoreceptors are there. Okay, so we already we already now understood what receptors are. Receptors are basically uh, a cell, specialized cells, a group of cells in the sense organs. These are basically very sensitive to stimulus. So when a stimulus comes, what is meant by stimulus? Stimulus means light or sound or smell or taste, which basically creates a change to the inside the body. Okay, so these stimulus, when it comes, something happens in these receptors which enables us to understand that, see, a stimulus has come, you have to act accordingly. So what happens to these receptors when a stimulus comes? So that is what we are going to learn in this particular video. Now, what is stimulus? Stimulus is a kind of energy. It can be light or sound or smell, which brings about a change in the in the body or in the animal. Now what are receptors? Receptors are a group of cells which are sensitive to that particular energy, sensitive to the energy which is provided by the stimulus. So what is the energy provided by the stimulus? If you see, sound is a form of energy, so the sound receptors are very sensitive to sound. Light is a form of energy, so photoreceptors are sensitive to light. When light comes, something happens in these photoreceptors. When smell comes, smell means chemicals are there. When those chemicals come, something happens in the olfactory receptors. So basically, receptors are a group of cell which are sensitive. That is, something happens when the energy of the stimulus, when the particular energy of the stimulus comes and falls on the group of cells. Now, if you see at a receptor, what happens? The stimulus comes. Okay, say for example, light is perceived by who? Light is perceived by our sense organ eye. Now eye has a special receptor. For what? Photoreceptor is there in order to be sensitive, in order to understand and react to this particular light. Okay, now this light energy, what happens? It falls on the receptor. Now what does the receptor do? Receptor are special kind of cells which actually react, which does something when this particular stimuli comes. What does this receptor do? It generates an electric impulse. You all know electricity, no? So small current, it creates a small current. It creates an electric impulse and then goes back to a normal state. So it creates an electric impulse. Now what happens to this electric impulse? Now this electric impulse is carried by the nerves. You ignore this word, okay? As of now, I'll come to that in detail. So receptor generates an electric impulse. Now this electric impulse is catched by the nerve. Now this nerve takes the impulse, the electricity, to the spinal cord or the brain. Now the brain receives this electric impulse, processes all the electrical impulses and then commands the set of other nerves and tells the muscles to withdraw. Say if you are to close your eyes, tells the eyes to close your eyes. So tells the muscles of the eyes to close, tell the muscles of the eyelids to close and protect the eye. So here stimuli means light is perceived by the sense organ eyes. Okay, stimuli means light is perceived by the sense organ eye, and here the light falls on the receptor, which is a photoreceptor. It creates a set of electrical impulses which is carried. Now, this particular, receptor here, the impulse is carried from the sense organ to the brain, from the sense organ to the brain. Okay, so the nerves which carry impulses from sense organ to the brain, these nerves are known as sensory nerves. Okay, so here sensory nerves, they carry impulses, electrical impulses from the sense organs to the brain. So sense organ to brain, sensory, sense to brain is sensory. Now they sensory nerves carry the impulse to the spinal cord or the brain, and brain processes all the messages and respond. Now the brain has to tell your eyelid. Now brain has to tell, from brain message has to go to the eyelid, right? From brain to eyelid, motor nerves. So to the muscles means motor nerves to the muscles, or it may not be always muscles. Okay, it can be like production of enzymes. So to the message can be to the stomach glands. Okay, it can be to the hormonal system. So lot of ways, the brain can send message to lot of areas, but in this particular case we will say that the brain is messaging your eyelid. So the nerve which carries message from the brain to the eyelid is motor nerve. So basically, the something which carries messages away from brain to other parts of the body is known as motor nerves. Now the motor nerves carry the message to the effector. Effector means here it is an eyelid, part of the body which responds to the stimuli. Here now the eyelid has to close, right? So the part of the body which respond to the stimuli is known as what? Stimulus is known as effector. In this particular case, which is the effector? Eyelid is the effector. Okay, so this eyelid, closing of the eyelid, it cannot happen haphazardly. It has to happen based on the instruction from the brain, and only from the instruction of the brain or spinal cord. So the effector, so the stimuli came, it was perceived by the sense organ, and it was received by the receptor, and it created a set of electrical impulses, and it was carried by the sensory nerve to the spinal cord or the brain, and it processes the information and responded to the effector through the motor nerves. Okay, so this is a way in which a stimuli actually generates a response. So I have already told you the effectors can be muscles or glands. Okay, so there are different effectors in our body. We are not going to study that in detail in this particular chapter. In higher classes, you will be studying all these things in detail. Now coming to the human nervous system. So what is the function of the nervous system? If you see, nervous system basically coordinates all the activities in our body, be it digestion, be it respiration, be it movement, be it walking, be it running. All the activities of our body is controlled by the nervous system. Now it also passes the information from one internal system to other. If you see, stomach, if you see, it is if you are hungry, that hunger information is transmitted to brain as well. You are afraid, then if your heartbeat is racing, or that information will be transmitted to the brain, and it generates a lot of sweat. So all these internal systems also communicate with each other. And for that matter, hormones are chemical messengers. You will study in detail, a bit later. You are going to study about the hormonal system which acts as messengers in the body, which actually helps in communication between the internal organs, from heart to liver to pancreas, and liver, pancreas to small intestine, and all those things you are going to study in detail. Now these nervous system help us obviously to read, write, think. So basically, if you see, what helps us to write and read, it's not just hands, it's also brain which helps us to do these things. But then brain and spinal cord, which are the most important part of body, are completely made up of nerves. Okay, so in effect, you can say that the nerves help us to read, write, think, memorize everything. Okay, so now we are going to study in detail about the nervous system. So first and foremost, we have to study what is a basic unit of nervous system. So what is a nervous system made up of? Nervous system, if you see, the simplest simplest nerve cell. Obviously, nervous system nerve will be made up of a lot of nerve cell. What is a nerve cell? Nerve cell is a neuron. Okay, nerve cell is a neuron. This is a structural and functional unit. That is, all the nerves are structurally made up of a group of nerve cells. Okay, a nerve is a group of nerve cells. And how does a nerve function? The way, I mean, if you combine the way in which the neurons work functionally, how does it do? I mean, when you combine the way in which the neurons work, you get the way in which the nerve work. So these basically, the neurons work for the nerve cell. Neurons work for the nerve together. All the neurons together work for the nerve and ultimately make up the working of the nerve. Okay, you will understand when I explain it further. So this is a structural and functional unit of the nervous system. All the nerves are made up of neurons. It is a bundle of neurons. Nerves means it is a bundle of neurons. Moreover, they are the functional unit. I mean, all the neurons together in coordination work in order to form the nerve. Okay, so neuron. Now you are coming to a single nerve cell. Now if you see the structure of the neuron, how is it, this particular neuron? So it is a very long cell. In fact, it is the largest cell in our body and longest cell as well. Okay, so in this neuron, if you see, why is it so large? Because it is adapted to the function. It has to carry messages. So from the tip of your hands to the brain, it has to carry, right? So if you see, it has to carry a long way. So if you have like very small cells, then you should have millions and millions of cells in order to carry these messages. So if you have long cells, means then you need only fewer number of cells. So in order to carry the messages over long distances, this particular neuron has taken up large cell body or a very long cell body. Okay, so how does it carry message? We already discussed that it carries message as electrical impulse. The most important thing is it carries a message as electrical impulse or nerve impulse. In other words, we can say that to be a nerve impulse. Now coming to the structure, like any cell, the neuron or the nerve cell, both are the same. Neuron also has a cell body. Inside it has cytoplasm, and inside it has a very beautiful nucleus. Okay, but then it is not like other cells. No, when we say a cell, we consider it to be like a round thing with a nucleus in the center and cytoplasm surrounding it. But here there is some difference. So what are these? See there, if you see, there are some extensions, right? If you see the cell body, there are some cytoplasmic extensions here. These extensions are known as dendrons. These are known as dendrons. It obviously has this is a plasma membrane, but if you see the cells, this cell has some extensions. These are known as dendrons. But then this extension again has some branches. These branches are known as dendrites. Okay, so the cell body has extensions known as dendrons. Dendrons. Okay, I did not write it down. So dendrons. Okay, these dendrons have branches known as dendrites, and the largest extension is known as axon. This largest extension is known as axon. Okay, now axon again is divided into branches known as axonite. Okay, axon again is divided into branches known as axonites. Now, if you see, the axonite ends in, so axonite are basically the branches of the axon. Now, if you see, the axons end in a bulb-like structure, a knob kind of structure known as synaptic knob. It ends in a bulb-like structure known as synaptic knob. Okay, so and also if you see around the axon, there is something like this, something which surrounds the axon. This surrounding substance is known as myelin sheath. Myelin sheath is generally very white in color and it provides protection to the axon, and moreover this kind of accelerates the accelerates the the messages that goes electrical impulse and acts as an insulator from any disturbances from outside. So that is a job of the myelin sheath. So if you see, so this is your text figure. If you see, this is a cell body, and the cell body has extensions known as dendrons, and the dendrons are divided into dendrites. And in the center, you have something known as nucleus. And the largest extension is known as axon. Axon is further divided into axonite, and each axonite goes and ends in something known as synaptic knob. It goes and ends in synaptic knob. This is the structure of the nerve cell. And in I wouldn't say that myelin sheath is there for all the nerves. In some nerves myelin sheath is absent. There are nerves with myelin sheath, and there are nerves without myelin sheath as well. And myelin sheath also shows some variations in different nerve cells. So myelin sheath basically acts as a insulator, and moreover it accelerates the rate at which the electrical impulse goes, and also protects the axons. Okay, so this is the structure of the neuron. So it has a cell body. Obviously the cell body will have cytoplasm and nucleus. And dendrites, what are dendrites? We already told that they are short fibers which arise from the cell. Okay, and axon is the longest fiber on the cell body of the neuron, and it has insulating and protective sheath which is known as myelin, and that is why it is known as myelin sheath. It insulates and protects the axons. Now if you see, there are different type of neurons. Okay, neurons also can be of different type. We already told, I briefly discussed this in the last video, I guess. So this is sensory neuron. What are the different types? Sensory neurons. Sensory neurons means what? I told you, from sense organ to the brain or spinal cord. Those neurons which transmit impulse from sense or impulses from the sense organs. Okay, towards the central nervous system is known as brain. Like central nervous system means brain or spinal cord. So brain and spinal cord together form the central nervous system. So those neurons which actually transmit messages from the sense organs to the central nervous system, that is brain and spinal cord, are known as sensory neurons. But then what are neurons? What are motor neurons? Motor neurons means those neurons which transmit impulses from the central nervous system, that is brain or spinal cord, to the muscle cells. Muscle cells means effectors. We already discussed this earlier. Effectors are known as motor neurons. Now what are relay neuron? Relay neuron are some specific neuron. Okay, relay neurons generally occur inside the brain or spinal cord. They are special kind of neurons which are say in spinal cord or brain. So they act as a link between other neurons. Like sensory neuron is here, okay, and motor neuron is here. Sometimes we are going to study reflex actions. So sometimes another neuron will directly link the sensory neuron to the motor neuron. Such kind of neurons are known as relay neurons. So what are neurons? These are special kind of neurons which occur in the central nervous system. They serve as a link between the sensory and the motor neuron. They directly link the sensory neuron and the motor neuron without going through all the complex process which we will be studying a bit later. Okay, so this is it. Now in the next video we are going to study as to how the messages are transmitted between two neurons.